Maybe you've heard this story. There's a story about a pig and a chicken. And they're walking together. And as they were walking down the road together, they see advertised a sign for a breakfast that the proceeds are going to benefit the poor. And so they begin to talk about this breakfast. And the chicken says to the pig, you know, I think we should be a part of that. That's a great cause. I think we need to be a part of it. And gosh, you know what? I think what we could do is we could offer them a breakfast of, well, eggs and ham. Well, the pig stood there for a minute and he thought about it and he said, well, you know what? That's easy for you to say because your part of it would be a contribution. My part is a total sacrifice. If you stop and think about it, it's very true, right? The chicken can just give the eggs. The pig's got to give his whole life for that deal. The pig understood that for him, it would mean an all-in commitment. Everything, both feet, right? Total commitment. See, that's something in our world, in our day and age, we don't hear much about. Commitment. When I do some premarital counseling with couples, I talk to them about commitment. Because again, we don't hear much about that in any aspect of life, but certainly in marriage it's becoming a lost thing. And part of it, I believe, is because what commitment involves. It involves responsibility, it involves dedication, it involves loyalty, and get this, it involves giving of yourself. And we don't like giving of ourselves. We like others to give us themselves, right? And so commitment is one of those things that we see being lost in our society. In the story of Ruth, we get this beautiful picture of commitment. We touched on it a little bit last week, but I'd like to go back and look at it again because it really helps you to understand the rest of this story and this character, Ruth. And it's found in verse 16. Remember, at this point, Naomi has told Ruth 3 different times, don't come with me, go back home, you are better off without me. And Ruth replies, don't ask me to leave and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. That is an amazing statement of commitment. That is an amazing statement of love. Within that statement is responsibility, all those things that we just talked about. In fact, that is probably one of the strongest and most beautiful statements of commitment in all of Scripture. In fact, it is so much so that a lot of people put that statement in their wedding vows. It's not a marriage-related commitment per se, but you can see how it would fit beautifully into the idea of a marriage commitment. But this is a woman saying it to her mother-in-law, a daughter-in-law who has lost her husband, who really has no connection to this woman now at all, saying, I'm going to stick with you. Your people are going to be my people. Your God, I'm embracing him. And see, really, that's at the center of this whole thing. Ruth embraces Yahweh. And because of that, she has this kind of commitment. Where you die, I'm going to die. So what she's saying is, Naomi, even wherever we go, if you die before I do, which would probably be the case, I'm not running away, because your people are my people now. Your place is my place. This is where I'm going to stay. In fact, Naomi, I'm going to be buried where you're buried. And then, just to make sure Naomi knows how serious she is, she says, may God take care of me. May God have vengeance on me if I don't follow through with this commitment. You think she's serious? Naomi did. Notice what it says in the next verse. When she saw that Ruth was determined, I'm not changing this girl's mind, she stopped speaking. She realized she's committed. She is all in. And what I see in this, folks, I see a commitment that is so rare in our world today that I wanted to take time just to highlight why this is so amazing. And so the first thing I want us to look at this morning is some characteristics of this all-in commitment, and then I want to leave you this morning with just 2 considerations about this commitment. So here we go. Number 1. This first characteristic of all-in commitment, she was committed despite the negative circumstances. Despite her negative circumstances. It's pretty bad, right? Her husband's died. Her sister-in-law's husband was dead. Her father-in-law is dead. It's pretty bad. Some of you can relate a little bit probably to what Ruth's gone through, because you have lost loved ones in close succession. Maybe within just a very short period of time. I remember it was several years ago now, my grandmother died, and I remember my grandfather telling me on several occasions we would go to the mainland, and we always made sure to go and visit them, and we were just talking one time, and he said to me, I'm going to live to be 100, then I'm done. And he told me that a number of times. Yep, I'm going to live to be 100, then I'm done. Well, he made it to 94. My grandmother died 2 months before him. And there was a definite change in his desire to live after she died. And so within just a couple of months, 2 very dear people had passed. So maybe you can relate to Ruth. Maybe you've had that kind of negative circumstance happen. But not only does she have that, she's got her mother-in-law saying, don't come with me. Stay back here. You're better off back here. And she goes one step further and she says, not only do you not want to be with me, God's fist is against me. God is against me. It's almost like Naomi is saying to her, look, I'm bad luck. You don't want to be around me. The circumstances were negative when Ruth makes this commitment. See, here's the thing. It's a whole lot easier to make a commitment when things are going good. When everything's great. Right? It's easy. It's easy to make a commitment to the Lord when He hasn't asked you to do anything yet. Right? You sit in a service and you hear a great message, or you're at some kind of a special meeting and you hear some great sermon, and that's me, God. I'm committed to you. I want to be committed to you. It's easy to say that, and I'm not doubting maybe the sincerity of a person's heart in that situation. I've been there too. But it's easy to say that when my emotions get stirred and yeah, that's what I want to do. But God hadn't asked me to do anything yet. The circumstances aren't tough. Things are pretty easy. I'm sitting in a cushy chair around some friends and loved ones listening to a great message on whatever it is. It's easy for me to say, yeah, I'm all there. It's when life starts falling apart around me and the people close to me are dying, or my circumstances are dying, or my marriage is dying, or my relationship, my job, you name it, is dying around me. Then it becomes a very tough thing to be committed. Ruth's all-in commitment came despite the negative circumstances. Here's number 2. She was committed despite poor examples around her. Now I want you to stop and think about it for a minute. Ruth has been raised, she's a Moabite. She's been raised with false religion. She's been raised with this God that you bring children to sacrifice. This statue of this God had this long funnel-like channel underneath his chin, and they would take these children and they would kill the children and set it in his hands, and the blood would drain down this channel into a pit below. And that was how they did this. Do you see how absolutely vacant of morality this religion? This is what Ruth's been raised in. So is there something better, you wonder? And so here comes this family, Elimelech and Naomi, and their 2 sons, and somewhere along the line, she meets one of the sons. Well, they're not Moabites, they're Hebrews. Oh, and they worship a God named Yahweh. He doesn't require child sacrifices. Prostitution isn't a part of worship with your God? Interesting. She must have been intrigued. But I got to tell you, Elimelech, Naomi, and the boys weren't the greatest examples. They weren't trusting in Yahweh. They had left the umbrella of Yahweh to go to a foreign land to look for food on their own. They did what seemed right in their own eyes. They weren't the greatest examples. It wasn't like she could look at them and go, wow, this is what it means to be a follower of the one true God. I'm committing to that. See, Elimelech, Naomi, they weren't super committed to their own people, let alone their own God, their own nation, let alone their God. They had left all of that. So they're not the greatest examples of commitment. Ruth makes this commitment despite her father-in-law, despite her husband, and despite even her sister-in-law. See, here's the deal. The second time around, Naomi says, look, I've told you once, I'm going to tell you again, I can't do anything for you. You're better off without me. The hand of God is against me. Go home. You got a much better chance of finding a husband. And Orpah says, you know what, Naomi? You're right. In essence, Orpah says, Naomi, I'm not committing to you. I'm not committing to your God, your people, or any of it. She doesn't say that, but her actions, that's what she did. And she turns around and she walks the other way. Ruth, on the other hand, stands there, hears the same thing, says, Naomi, you know what? You're right, but I'm still sticking with you. Despite the fact that Orpah walked away, despite the fact that she's not an example that I'm going to follow, I'm going to commit. I'm going to go all in, and I'm staying with you. Here's number 3 that really, to me, stood out about this commitment. She was committed despite discouraging advice. Again, I can't underscore this enough. Naomi didn't want her to come with her. Now, there's all kinds of ideas as you read through some different commentaries and people that have written on this, what their theory is, why she was so adamant about, was it that she really, really just wanted them to find husbands? Could be. Was it that she was embarrassed that she was going to be going back with these foreign women and it would demonstrate that they had been out of God's will in the whole process, and now it's even harder to go back? I'd rather not have you guys go back because then I got to explain you to everybody. And we don't know exactly. But she tries 3 times to discourage Ruth. In fact, she says, Orpah has gone back to her gods. Go back too. And we talked about this last week. What on earth was she thinking? Send her back to that foreign God that really wasn't a God at all? What on earth? was Naomi thinking? Poor advice. But see, here's the deal. God cut through all of that and intervened. And through His grace, Ruth makes the right decision, even though she's getting this bad advice. And can I tell you something? And I hate to admit this, and maybe you've already experienced it in your own walk as a believer. You can get some really bad advice from other Christians. I hate to admit that to you, but it's true. And can I go one step further and tell you, I've gotten some really bad advice from followers of Jesus. You say, why is that? Well, sometimes it's kind of like where Naomi was. She was so bitter about her circumstances, she couldn't see clear to give anybody right advice. Sometimes, unfortunately, I think it's because of sin in a person's life, and they want to give you bad advice. They want you to be as miserable as they are, so they're going to tell you to do the same junk that they did. We don't know exactly what Naomi was thinking here. We do know that bitterness had clouded her judgment, and we do know that despite all of that, despite this discouraging advice, here is this amazing woman, Ruth, that says, yeah, I hear you, but I'm clinging to you. See, Orpah kissed Naomi goodbye. Ruth clung to Naomi. There's a lot of people that are willing to kiss you goodbye. There's few people you're going to find that want to cling to you, even in bad times. But Ruth was one of those clingers. You're not getting rid of me. I'm committing to you. I am all in. Here's number 4. She was committed despite no guarantee of good. There was zero guarantee that anything good was going to come from this commitment. In fact, you could really make the argument that more than likely there was going to be a whole lot of bad waiting for them. You say, well, how is that? She is a foreigner getting ready to go into another country. She is a widow in a male-dominated society. She already, even if she stayed home until she got married, she would still struggle. But now she's going to a foreign land, a foreign place where people are going to be looking at her as a foreigner, and now she's got to try to make it. And she's with another widow who is older that can't really fend for herself. She's now taking on that responsibility as well. And so you could very easily argue, you know what, Ruth, if you do this, I'm not sure if there's going to be any good, but I can pretty much assure you there's going to be some bad. And you say, well, maybe Ruth hadn't really thought it through and she makes this commitment just out of pure emotion. Oh, come on. Come on, stop and think about it. She's leaving everything. She's leaving her home country. She's leaving her dead husband's grave. She's leaving security. She's going to a place she doesn't know, as far as we know, has never been, to be a foreigner, a widow, an outcast. She has no guarantee anything good's going to come out of this, and every reason to believe that there may be a whole lot of bad. And despite that, she's all in. Reality is, folks, most of us want to know before we make any kind of commitment, what's in it for me? Right? What am I getting out of this deal? Huh? Am I right? Yes. Or is that just me? I know it's not just me. We want to know. We step into a marriage. What's in it for me? We step into a business deal. What's in it for me? We step into a church. What's in it for me? Honestly, when you look at this, I don't see how Ruth could have possibly thought, what's in it for me? Because there's really, you can't find anything. This is really commitment. This is amazing commitment. This is all in, both feet. I'm going for this thing. I know circumstances are bad. I know I don't have good examples. I know the advice has been crazy. I have no idea if this is going to turn out good, but I'm in. And you're going, yeah, Ruth, what an amazing woman. Huh? She should be the poster child for every woman in this room. That's the kind of woman right there I want to be, as long as I don't have to make that kind of commitment. Right? Huh? And every guy in here is going, yeah, I wish my wife would be committed like that. I wish she would be committed like that. I sure hope she never expects me to be committed like that, but I want her to be committed like that. So we look at a person like Ruth and we admire her and we go, this is. I mean, you talk about a ray of sunshine in the midst of a cloudy story. Ruth is the beam of light right now in this commitment. I mean, that's why I had to come back to this, because it's so amazing, it's so beautiful. But in the midst of the beauty and the light and all the fun, and it's so doggone convicting too. Because we love this as long as it's not me having to make that kind of commitment. Yeah, it's so refreshing. It's so encouraging. I sure hope God never asks me to do that. And that brings us to our considerations. As we consider Ruth's commitment, our first consideration, consider your commitments. We've all got them. It just depends on how deep we are in them. We've all got certain commitments, certain things we're supposed to be committed to. The question is, how committed am I? Am I all in? Am I just kind of partially in? How about your commitment to your spouse? Ephesians 5:22. Wives, this means submit to your husbands as to the Lord. Are you committed to that? Are you committed to say, the buck stops at him? He's the leader. And I'm going to support him in that. You committed to that? You say, man, this is hard. I know. But when you say I do, did you really mean I kind of do?
Amen. That's a good word.
Verse 25, Ephesians 5. Husbands, this means love your wives. Well, that's easy. I'm such a lovable guy. Wait a minute. Just as Christ loved the church. Oh, well, how did Christ love the church? He gave up his life for her. We talked a little bit about this last week. The idea is not just dying for someone, it's giving up life. Giving up the things that would make you feel like, oh yeah, this is fun, I want to do this, makes me feel good. Now I'm going to lay that down because she needs this. Guys, it's treating her like the queen she's supposed to be in your home. And there's no question in her mind that you see her as queen, because that's the way you're treating her. Not just saying it, but you're showing it. Why? Because you are committed. You're all into this marriage thing. It wasn't just about the warm fuzzies you had. Oh, I watched her walk. I absolutely love doing weddings. And I'll tell you why. Number one, it's really great to rehearse all of that. It's very convicting, but it's great to rehearse all of that and go, man, I'm telling these guys they're supposed to be doing it. Am I doing it? So it's really good accountability for me. But the other reason I like to do weddings is I love to watch the couple and how they react to each other. And the one I get the biggest kick out of, Kenny, take notes, okay? The one I get the biggest kick out of, the guys down front, we're together, and by this time the wedding party has come down, and normally, the groom, he's all cool, and the guys are coming down, they're shaking hands, oh Bible. And they're all, and it's all like, yeah, it's all cool, it's all cool. And then, the flower girl comes down, they're doing their cute thing, and the ring bearer. And then all of a sudden the music changes, and out from the shadows comes the bride and her dad. And I stand here next to the guy, and I'm doing this. I'm watching. And it happens so many times, it's great. You see the guy going, all of a sudden it's gone. And it's like, his face just goes, and then the bottom lip starts to, and then all of a sudden, and by the time she's down front, this guy is a pool of mush, man. It's great, I love it. And the crazy thing is, most of the time the girl hasn't shed a tear. She's just smiling. She's loving life, man, because it's my day and I'm beautiful. And this guy's, he's a pool and she's standing there, big smile. It's great. I love it. And please don't take this wrong, but there's a sense that both of them should be crying. Down on their knees going, dear God, what are we about to step into? I don't mean that bad, but if you've been married for any length of time, you know what I'm talking about. It's not a walk in the park. It takes commitment. It takes all-in commitment, both feet, not dabbling, all in. And so as you consider Ruth's commitment, where's your commitment to your spouse? How about your commitment to your children and grandchildren? See, I've noticed something too as we're raising our kids, and I notice it just breaks my heart. We're involved until about 5th grade. We go to the parent conferences, we go to all the school activities, and something happens when they hit about 6th grade. Let me tell you what it is. They morph into weirdness. Middle school is just weird, I just got to tell you. And I know that we got some middle school guys and girls in here this morning, and I love you guys, and I've been there too. I was a middle schooler, and I was a little strange. But what happens is we stop staying involved because they act like they don't want us around. Because when they stepped into whatever it was they stepped into that they probably need to check their feet on, whatever it was they stepped in, it made them cool.
Yeah, that's right.
And it made you uncool. And I don't want you around anymore. I mean, I'm not a baby. And so we do that. We start pulling away. And by the time they're in high school and they have a parent-teacher conference or there's something very important in life, we're not there. Hey, don't take my word for it. You go talk to the teachers at the high school. They'll tell you all about it. If they have 1 or 2 parents show up on a meet the teacher, parent-teacher meeting type of thing, they feel like they've had a good night. Folks, can I tell you something? Your commitment level to your children needs to be more as they get older, not less. It changes. You're not holding their hand all the time. You're not hovering over them, I hope. But your commitment to them, it's got to be more. Because, especially in today's world, they are facing so much more than they ever did even 20, 30 years ago. And we've got to say, you know what, I'm committed to this. We continue in Ephesians 6, verse 4. Fathers, and really in the context, it's parents. Don't provoke your children to anger by the way you treat them, but rather bring them up with discipline and instruction that comes from the Lord. I was talking with somebody the other day. I don't even remember who it was now. We were talking about children. Oh, I do know who it was. It was last Saturday. It was Pastor Jonah and I. We were talking about raising our kids, and his kids are a little bit behind where my kids are. His are in high school, and so we were just talking, comparing some notes, and I shared something with him that somebody shared with me years ago, and I just, in the course of our conversation, I said, man, let me share this with you. It's something that somebody shared with me when my kids, my first two, were just almost babies, and it stuck in my head, and I've really tried to make this a priority. He told me this guy said, rules without relationship will lead to rebellion. If you have rules and you do this and don't ask me why and don't question it, and you have no relationship beyond being the rule giver in your home, you're setting your kids up for failure, rebellion. You're provoking them to anger. I believe that with all my heart. We've been given children not just to raise them in some straitjacket kind of way, but to build relationship with them, and to demonstrate through that relationship that there's a God, Abba, Daddy, parent, who wants to have a relationship with you as well. Because the way that we treat our kids, especially dads, listen, you are setting your child up for their image of God. If you're stern and never pleased, and everything's always wrong because you're not doing it right, and every time something goes wrong, you're lowering the boom, guess what their image of God's going to be? Because we call God Father, so what's their image of God going to be? On the other hand, if you're a dad that's not around, that you're always finding an excuse to be out of the house, that you pop in here and there, you're not really involved in your kid's life, what image of God do you think they're going to have? That God's just up there somewhere. He pops in once in a while to pop me on the butt and then move on. What is your commitment to your children? You only have them for a short time. Grandparents, I just want to slide this in there. I'm not a grandparent yet. I would love to be when the time's right, but I got to tell you this. I had two great models of grandparents growing up. They were involved in our lives. I had one set of grandparents literally lived just a few blocks away. I could walk to their house, spend a lot of time with them. I had another set of grandparents live in another state altogether. But when they came, which was on an annual basis, and spent weeks with us, they would pour into us. So whatever your situation is, there's no excuse. You can have an amazing influence and impact on your grandchildren. What's your commitment? It may mean, again, especially as they get older, they're going to act like they don't want you around. You're the old fart. What do you know? You don't know anything. Make it happen. Be there. Make them cringe when you walk around. I can't wait for that. Oh man, here comes my grandfather again. And I'm going to hug them right in front of all their friends, give them big wet kisses. What's your commitment? Hey, I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to take it out of the realm of physical family, and I'm going to take it into spiritual family. What's your commitment to your church family? This is going to get a little sticky, but here's the deal. I think we're in a place in so many churches where we are not anywhere close to being all in our commitment to our church family. We show up. We're not really in it. We're more parasitic Christians than anything else. And what I mean by that is I want you to pray for me. I want you to provide for me. I want you to preach to me. I want you to encourage me. but don't expect me to give anything back. I'm just a taker. That's what I mean by a parasitic Christian. Folks, listen. I'm afraid that I've done a poor job at times painting a picture for you of what God is doing with us and what that requires. I mean, just very quickly, over the last several years, we've literally built dwelling places, homes for people. We're in the process of doing that right now. They're not elaborate. They're not, you wouldn't walk into these places, oh my gosh. You'd probably walk in and go, oh, is this the best we can do? Yeah, it is. But you know what? By God's grace, we've been able to do it and help people out. The money just doesn't fall from the sky. I mean, ultimately it does, but you know what I'm talking about. Food bank ministry, hundreds of folks have been fed, and most of them not a part of this church family. And again, folks, that takes people to do it. You know, people that go once a month on a Thursday, spend 4, 5, 6 hours loading heavy boxes into the back of a truck, driving up here, putting it inside of our food bank, making sure it's on shelves, then being there when folks show up to greet them and help them by giving them a box or a bag and helping them put their stuff in. We mentioned the Awana ministry, 10 years. Listen, if on average we had 50 kids in Awana, that'd be 500 kids over the last 10 years. And that's just average. Sometimes it's more than that. But just a rough estimate, 500 kids that have gone through that ministry. That takes volunteers, it takes teachers, it takes money. Curriculum costs money, and gifts and snacks, which a lot of times our volunteers just do it out of their own free will. Many of you sponsor Compassion Kids, Baptist Haiti Mission Kids. Again, that's all good stuff. We're supporting 5 missionaries right now financially. God's called us to minister to preschoolers and their family through All God's Children Preschool. All of this takes bodies, money, commitment. It doesn't just happen. You say, why are you saying this, Randy? Because we need us. This is not Randy's church. Please, don't ever refer, oh, well, you go to church. Oh, I go to Randy's church. It's not mine. It's not mine. And it's not yours. It's His. And He's called us to this. Us, you and me. We are a part. And we need to get all in. Every way we can. Say, oh, I don't really feel like working with Awana kids. It's fine. That may not be where you fit in. But find where it is. Where's your commitment? And then where's your commitment to the truth? 2 Timothy 1:13 says, hold on to the pattern of wholesome teaching that you learned from me, a pattern shaped by the faith and love that you have in Christ. Through the power of the Holy Spirit who lives within us, carefully guard the precious truth that has been entrusted to you. Hallelujah. Folks, man, are you committed to this? Are you really committed to it? I mean, there are some things, I call them die-fors. There are some die-fors in life. A die-for is if somebody held a gun to your head and said, stop believing this or I'll have to shoot. Then I'd have to say, shoot, because I can't stop believing it. Are you there with the truth? When it's time to get into this book, you go, man, I want to know as much about this as I can. This is an amazing God who's worked all through history. He's continuing to work. You heard Louise talk about it this morning, going into the book of Revelation. We get a chance to glimpse into what He's going to be doing as well. Man, do you want to guard that truth? Are you committed to that truth? And the last thing I want to leave you with is consideration number 2. Consider God's commitment. Ruth's commitment is this beautiful picture of the commitment that God has made to you and me. He doesn't just draw us to Himself. He draws us to himself, and get this, he clings to us. He says this, I will never leave you or forsake you. He clings to us. Romans 8:31. What shall we say about such wonderful things as these? If God is for us, who can ever be against us? Since he didn't spare even his own son, but gave him up for us all, won't he also give us everything else? What's he saying? Look, God went all in for you and me. It wasn't a partial commitment. It wasn't a contribution. It was an all-in commitment. I am going to lay down the life of my son to pay for your sin so that you can have a relationship with me for eternity. Consider that. Consider the commitment that God has made to you and me.
Thank you.
And Romans 12:1 says, when we consider that, what is it that we should give ourselves? A living sacrifice, holy and acceptable unto God, which is only reasonable. There's a story about a chicken and a pig. Which one are you? Are you the chicken? Oh, I'm really okay with contributing. Are you the pig? Are you willing to go all in on your commitment? Would you bow your heads, please, and close your eyes?